All right, buckle up, because this time you guys sent us deep into generative AI and how to use it responsibly, ethically.
Yeah.
We're talking all about deepfakes, biased algorithms, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I've got like a whole stack of articles here, some corporate guidelines,
Oh, yeah.
even like this fascinating study on, get this, knowledge graphs. Have you heard about this?
I have. It's a very interesting area of research right now.
Yeah. So it's a lot to dig through.
Right.
But that's why we're here. So
Right.
we're going to like break it all down,
Yeah.
make sense of it.
So for sure.
What I find so interesting about this whole thing is it's like generative AI.
Yeah.
It's throwing like this whole idea of what responsibility even means in tech.
Right.
Like it's out the window.
So, yeah. I mean, it's not just can we build it?
Right.
It's should we build it?
Exactly.
And if we do, how do we do it?
Yeah.
What considerations do we have to take into account?
It's like we're holding like the keys to this brand new, like,
I like that analogy.
super fast sports car, right? Like, yeah, it's exciting, it's cool, but like one wrong move and it could go very badly.
It's very powerful. This technology is very powerful.
So to kick things off, like, why is everyone so freaked out about this type of AI?
Yeah.
Like, what makes it different from
Right.
like, I don't know, like the calculator app on my phone?
Well, I think it comes down to this ability to create things that look and sound so real, things that used to be, solely in the realm of human creativity.
Right.
We're talking about speeches that could fool a crowd,
Whoa.
music that'll have you tapping your feet, pictures so lifelike you'd swear they were taken with a camera.
Yeah.
And this is groundbreaking because it opens up,
Yeah.
a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas.
Okay, so it's not just about like AI making decisions anymore.
That's right.
It's about it creating stuff that like could totally trick us into thinking like a person made this.
That's true.
No wonder everyone's like a little
Right.
on edge about this whole thing. And one of like the biggest things that keeps coming up are deep fakes.
Yes.
Right? Like we've all seen them.
Right.
They can be funny, like silly internet memes,
Sure.
but like the potential for harm is really huge, right?
Absolutely. Imagine like a video so convincing, like indistinguishable from the real deal of a world leader declaring war
Oh, wow.
that they never did.
Yeah.
Or, a CEO making promises that could tank their company.
Yeah.
The damage to reputations, to trust, even to democracy itself is pretty scary when you think about it.
It's like, it's kind of chilling to think about.
Yeah.
So, one of the companies that we were looking at, Act Defense, they're like right on the front lines of this whole fight against AI generated misinformation.
Yeah.
So what are they doing to like actually combat this?
They're essentially fighting fire with fire.
Oh, interesting.
They're using AI to spot those subtle tells
Okay.
that give away a deep fake.
Okay.
They look for patterns, anomalies, things that,
Yeah.
the human eye or ear might miss.
Gotcha.
So it's a constant game of cat and mouse because as the deepfake technology gets more sophisticated, so do the tools to detect them.
Makes sense. So like for everyday people like us, we're just scrolling through our feeds, like how do we even protect ourselves? It's like it's getting harder to tell what's real anymore.
Approach everything you see online
Okay.
with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Good advice.
Like, if something seems too sensational to be true,
Okay.
it probably is.
Yeah.
Double check it against other sources,
Right.
And there's some really cool tools designed to help you spot deepfakes too.
That's good to know because, you can't trust everything you see. It's like that old saying, trust but verify. And it's more important now than ever, it seems like.
Absolutely.
Okay. So kind of shifting gears a bit here.
Okay.
Our research also showed how generative AI is really like shaking things up in the job market, which
Understandably so.
Yeah.
People
are like honestly like kind of worried about being replaced by robots, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a realistic fear?
It's complicated, right? Because some jobs are definitely more vulnerable to automation.
Right.
Especially those involving repetitive tasks.
Right.
But I think it's more nuanced than just machines taking over.
Okay.
We need to focus on retraining, upskilling the workforce so that people can work alongside AI.
Right.
and use it as a tool.
So it's like, it's less about like being replaced and more about like humans and AI being like on the same team.
That's a great way to put it.
Each, like, using their strengths.
Exactly.
And one of our sources, who's like this expert in AI and labor, was saying that like this could actually lead to like this whole wave of new job opportunities that we haven't even thought of yet.
Think about the early days of the internet. I mean, it disrupted countless industries, but it also created entirely new fields and career paths that we never could have imagined.
That's true. I never thought I'd, be doing this as my job.
Right.
Like, who would have thought? But
exactly.
But it's not just about like, doom and gloom here.
That's right.
It's about like adaptation and innovation, right?
Absolutely.
But with that comes like the responsibility to make sure things are done ethically, right?
Absolutely. One area where this is super important is in how AI uses data.
Right.
Because these systems are only as good as the information they're trained on.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And if that data is biased or incomplete, the AI's output is going to be flawed.
Right. And we've seen that happen in the real world. Like with
give me an example.
Like facial recognition systems being way less accurate for certain ethnicities, which is honestly like terrifying to me.
It's a huge concern.
Yeah. So one of our sources, FICO, have you heard of them?
I have.
Yeah. The credit scoring company. They have this fascinating approach to this whole problem. They're really into something called like
what's that?
Data provenance.
Interesting.
Which is basically like,
why does that?
Like a family tree for information. Right.
I can see.
So it's like, it's not just enough to like have the data.
Right.
You need to know where it came from, how it's been used, like the whole.
Right. The whole journey.
The whole journey of the data, which makes sense because like this is like people's lives we're talking about impacting here.
Yeah, it's about transparency and accountability.
Right.
Being able to trace back every decision the AI makes to the data it was trained on. And making sure that that data is accurate, fair, and unbiased.
Like building a foundation of trust.
Exactly.
Brick by brick.
Yeah.
You touched on this earlier, but can you like elaborate on what companies like Everlaw are doing in this space? Because their work in law seems particularly relevant. Yeah.
What Everlaw is doing is they're using AI to analyze legal documents.
Okay.
Which is, incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But the key difference here is that their system doesn't just like spit out a verdict, right?
Okay.
It provides documentation of its reasoning.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like giving the AI a paper trail. So you can follow its logic, understand how it arrived at that conclusion.
So it's like we're like shining a light like into the black box of AI, demystifying it a bit.
Exactly.
And like in something like law, I imagine that's essential, right?
Oh, absolutely. Transparency and trust are paramount in law. Yeah. And we're seeing more and more companies embrace this whole idea of building transparency directly into AI systems.
Okay. So we talked about some of the pitfalls of AI, deepfakes, jobs, bias, and data.
Right.
But like what's hopeful is all of our sources also point to some really cool solutions that are out there.
Absolutely.
And one of the coolest ones we keep bumping into is this idea of knowledge graphs. Yeah. You've mentioned them a few times. Can you unpack that concept a little bit? Because I think this is where it gets really juicy.
Yeah. They're really interesting because it's this massive web of information, right?
Okay.
But each piece of data isn't just an island. It's connected to other pieces in meaningful ways. And AI can use these graphs to understand the context, the relationships between things.
Okay.
To see the bigger picture, basically.
So it's like we're giving AI like a crash course in common sense, like to connect the dots. Yeah. So it's thinking a little bit more like we do, hopefully.
Hopefully.
That seems like it can make a huge difference, especially with things like bias, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's say you've got an AI that's, designed to help banks decide who qualifies for a loan.
Okay.
Now, a typical AI might just look at things like credit score and income.
Yeah.
But a knowledge graph could give that AI a much broader perspective.
Okay. Hold on, because this is important. I think we gotta really unpack this.
Okay.
Because this is huge. So let's take a quick break.
Right.
And when we come back, we'll dive deeper into how knowledge graphs could actually be the key to making AI not just smarter,
right,
but more ethical, which is really what we want. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back. So before the break, we were really getting into knowledge graphs and how they could be like this game changer for ethical AI.
Absolutely.
You were about to give an example about loan applications.
Right. So imagine like you're a bank and you've got this AI that's helping you make loan decisions.
Yeah, right.
A traditional AI might just be looking at like credit scores and income.
Right.
Which are important, but they don't tell the whole story.
Right.
But with a knowledge graph, the AI could consider way more factors.
Okay.
Like, did this person have like a medical emergency that messed up their finances?
Oh, okay.
Or maybe they live in an area that doesn't have a lot of, financial services.
Right.
So it's not just seeing numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's starting to get a glimpse into like the real life context.
Yeah, the why.
Yeah, the why behind the numbers.
Yeah.
And that can be huge when we're talking about fairness.
Okay.
Because it allows for this more nuanced assessment, which can actually help reduce bias.
It's like the difference between like seeing a black and white photo and then like seeing it in full color.
Yes.
Like suddenly you're like, oh, wow, there's so much more here.
There's so much more to the picture
than I thought.
I just love that analogy.
Yeah.
And that's why companies like Neo4j, they're really excited about knowledge graphs.
Yeah.
Because they see this as like a key factor in getting us closer to AI that's not just powerful, but fair and unbiased.
Okay, so speaking of like AI being fair and unbiased, one thing that kept coming up in our research was this idea of AI hallucinations.
Yeah.
Which, I gotta be honest, the first time I heard that, I was like, are we making this up?
It sounds like we're on a sci-fi movie set or something.
Right.
But it's a real thing.
So tell me more about this.
So basically, AI hallucinations are when the system generates like an output, like an answer to something that seems like plausible, but it's actually like totally wrong, or nonsensical, or like completely made up.
So it's like confidently stating something that's just not real.
Completely false.
Why does that happen? Like, is it a glitch?
It's not really a glitch in the traditional sense.
Okay.
It's because these systems are trained on so much data that if that data has errors or biases, the AI is going to internalize those and like amplify them.
Okay.
And that can lead to these hallucinations.
One of our sources had this really interesting example where they were saying how an AI, if you ask it to write like a history, it might create a totally fake event and like mix real facts with made up details.
That's right. And it's scary because these systems, they sound so convincing,
Right. And it's hard to tell.
It is, especially if you're not an expert on the topic.
Right. You're like, well, that sounds right. And it's like, oh, wait, no, that's not true at all.
And that's why it's so important to be able to understand, like, how did the AI get to that answer?
Right. Like, show your work.
Yes, exactly. Explain yourself, AI. What data did you look at? What logic did you use?
Right, like no more black boxes.
Right. We need that transparency.
Yeah.
And the good news is that there are developers out there working on systems that can, like, show you their work.
Oh, that's cool.
So they can provide, like, an audit trail of their decision-making process.
So you can see, like, step by step how they got to a certain conclusion.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that seems like a huge step in the right direction.
It is, because it builds trust. Yeah. Not just with, like, the people using the AI, but with society as a whole.
It's like we're saying, okay, AI, we see you.
We're watching
you. We're paying attention.
Prove it.
Prove to us that we can trust you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more transparent these systems are, the more likely we are to actually embrace them.
Right.
And use them for good.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, like, the responsibility of companies and developers, but this is where it gets kind of interesting to me, because I feel like a lot of people listening are like, well, I'm not building AI.
Right.
Like, what can I really do to, like, make sure this stuff is used ethically?
That's a great question. It's easy to feel like, what can one person do?
Right.
But our choices really do matter.
Okay.
Like, as consumers, as citizens, are we supporting companies that are trying to develop AI responsibly?
Okay.
Are we educating ourselves about how these systems can be biased?
Right.
Are we using AI tools ethically ourselves?
So it's about, like, being mindful, I guess.
Mindful.
The choices we make.
Informed,
yeah.
And using our voices.
Right. And our wallets, too.
And our wallets, yes, to support the kind of future we want to see.
Because it's not like we're just bystanders in this whole thing. Like, we're active participants whether we realize it or not.
We really are.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to remember, that we have agency here. Now, shifting gears a little bit.
Okay.
Because one area where this individual responsibility thing gets really interesting is in the creative world.
Okay. Yeah.
Because, AI can generate music now and art and literature and even code.
Right.
And there's this huge debate happening about, like, what does this mean for the future of creativity?
Yeah, it's like that whole man versus machine thing has taken on, like, this whole other level now.
Exactly. And some people are afraid that, AI is going to devalue human creativity.
Right.
And we're just going to be surrounded by this mass-produced, soulless art.
Right. But then, other people see it as, like, this opportunity to collaborate with AI.
Yeah, to enhance what they're already doing.
Right. Like, using AI as, like, almost like a creative partner in a way.
Or, like, if you're a writer and you have writer's block, maybe AI can help you get unstuck.
That's a good point.
Or generate melodies that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
I like that.
So, yeah, there's this whole spectrum of possibilities.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard to say how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, it's still early.
But it's a conversation that we all need to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we wrap up this part, I wanted to touch on one more thing about generative AI that often gets overlooked.
What's that?
Its impact on the environment.
Oh, right. That's a big one.
Because we don't really think about that when we think about AI.
Easy to forget about.
But it takes a lot of energy.
It does. It takes a ton of energy to develop and train these AI models.
Right, because we're essentially, like, building these huge, complex...
digital brains.
Yeah, digital brains.
And those brains need a lot of power.
Yeah.
Which means more carbon emissions.
So as these models get, like, even more sophisticated and require even more data...
it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Unless we start thinking about this more sustainably.
Right, and that's on, like, everybody.
Yeah. It is. It's on the researchers, the developers, policymakers, investors. Like, everyone's got to play a role.
It's like we can't just focus on, like, what AI can do.
Right.
We also got to think about, like, how can we do it
sustainable
in a way that doesn't, like, destroy the planet.
Exactly. We got to think long term.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But there's still so much more to explore.
There is.
And when we come back, we're going to delve into how some companies are actually responding to all of these ethical challenges.
Okay, I'm excited to hear this. So we'll be right back. And we are back for the home stretch of our generative AI ethics deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored, like, the potential upsides, the risks, the what-ifs, and even how this tech could, like, totally reshape everything from art to, like, how we work.
Totally.
But the good news is, like, it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Not at all.
Like, our sources show that there are people who are really working to make AI more responsible.
Absolutely.
Which is honestly, like, really heartening to see.
And it's happening on a bunch of different levels, like from the big corporate boardrooms to, those research labs.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those, like, solutions, because it's easy to get bogged down in all the what ifs.
Sure.
You've mentioned knowledge graphs a few times now.
Yeah.
It's like, they're like, the secret weapon in making AI more ethical. How so?
Well, they have huge potential, right? Like, remember that example we talked about with the AI and the loan applications?
Yeah.
Instead of just crunching numbers, the AI can actually start to understand the why behind a credit score, like the things that might have happened in a person's life to affect their finances.
So it's almost like the AI is, like, gaining a sense of empathy.
Yeah.
Like understanding the human stories behind all those data points.
Yeah. It's like instead of just seeing a bunch of numbers, it's seeing a person.
Right. Which is huge.
It's huge. And that's why companies like Neo4j, they're, like, all about knowledge graphs.
Yeah. They're putting them at the heart of their whole approach to AI ethics, right?
Exactly. And what's really cool about how they see it is that by using knowledge graphs, you can actually tackle multiple ethical problems at the same time.
Okay. Like what?
Well, for example, by connecting different pieces of information, knowledge graphs can help to uncover bias in data sets that might have gone unnoticed before.
So it's like having this, like, magnifying glass that helps you see those hidden assumptions and blind spots that can creep into AI.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, knowledge graphs can also help to make AI more transparent. Remember how we talked about how important explainability is? Being able to understand how the AI made a decision.
Right. Because if it's a black box, how are we supposed to trust it?
Exactly. Well, knowledge graphs can help to open up that black box a little. By showing us how different pieces of information are connected, they can help us trace back the AI's line of reasoning.
So it's like giving the AI a way to show its work. That way we're not just blindly trusting it, we can see how it got there.
Yeah, we can check its work. And that's going to be super important as we start using AI for more and more stuff, especially in those sensitive areas like healthcare and finance.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what's your, biggest takeaway from all this?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. What do you really hope people listening will remember about generative AI ethics?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the future of AI isn't set in stone.
Okay.
It's not this inevitable thing that we have no control over.
Right.
The choices that we make today, all of us, are going to shape what AI looks like tomorrow.
So it's about recognizing that we all have a voice, we have a say in this, and that we can and should demand better from the people creating these technologies.
Exactly. And it's not just about demanding better, it's about being a part of the solution.
What can we do?
Well, like we talked about before, educate yourself. Support companies that are trying to do this right. Even just talking about these issues with your friends and family, that's a start.
So it's about realizing that we're not just passive consumers of this technology.
Right.
We're active citizens in a world that's being transformed by it.
Perfectly said.
Well, on that note, I think that's a wrap for our generative AI ethics deep dive. To everyone listening, thank you for coming on this journey with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And remember, keep asking the tough questions, stay curious, and most importantly, stay engaged. The future of AI, honestly, it depends on it.